Welcome to the All In Podcast with Nate Peo. I'm your host, Nate Peo. Today's guest is Miha Matlievski. So Miha is a Slovenian high school dropout, dreaming of being a successful entrepreneur at the early age of 18. Put in passion, put in hard work, and within 12 years, he had a net worth of $15 million. But along came the financial crash of December of 2009, foreclosed on, lost it all, and then he rebuilt himself from the ground up and was able to become another successful entrepreneur. And now he's coaching others. He's known as the fail coach. So this is an exciting opportunity to meet somebody from another country, clear across the other side of the world. It's amazing what happens when you put yourself out there, when you make connections with people, where that will lead. You never know who you're going to meet and where that's going to take you. So that's why I'm such a big advocate of the power of personal relationships and growing your network and just being along for the ride. So as always, please subscribe to our show. And if you find value in it at the end of the show, tell one or two other people who else might find value in it. So without further ado, here's Miha, the fail coach.
Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with Nate Peo, the show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
Hello, welcome to the All In Podcast with Nate Peo. I am your host, Nate Peo. So today's guest comes from across the pond. He's on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. It's Miha Matlievski. He runs a successful business called The Fail Coach. And we're going to talk today about how he's turned failures into success and how personal relationships have enabled him to achieve that. So welcome to the show, Miha.
Well, hello. Hi, Nate. It's a pleasure to be your guest.
Yeah, thanks for coming over. So it's kind of interesting how we meet people, how we get connected in this day and age. It's if you start kind of putting your feet out there and you just kind of are open to seeing where things go, the people that come into your life are pretty amazing, where their backgrounds are, what they come from. So you live in Serbia, right?
Yes, for the past 2.5 years.
Yeah, so
I'm here in Serbia. Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy because this short journey has taken me to meet some people like from California to Atlanta, Georgia, which led me to people across the way in Serbia. So it's crazy how you can just kind of go on this wild ride. So I think the world's getting a lot smaller and a lot easier to connect, where even maybe 10 years ago, these conversations wouldn't have been as easy to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about why you're the fail coach. That seems like a name that says, like, why would I want to pick up somebody that's failed? Like, don't I want to be a winner? Don't I want to be successful? What's behind the fail coach?
Well, the reality, I mean, if you've been in business for more than one day, you know that you'll have a lot of mishaps, trials, errors, failures, whatever you want to call them. Usually we reserve the word failure for when we try to achieve something, when we set a goal that brings high positive emotions. And then when we don't achieve that, we go in the other direction. So failure is always attached with high negative emotions. That's how we process it. So if you eliminate the emotions, and that's the healthy relationship with failure that I'm trying to, teach my clients, my students, you just see it for what it is. You tried something, it didn't work. Now let's examine the process leading to that failure. Let's figure out whether we were doing some wrong steps. Maybe there were bottlenecks we didn't recognize. Let's learn from that experience. Let's try something new and, just fail fast, fail forward. If you're an entrepreneur, you'll have a lot of that. Especially for entrepreneurs, because we entrepreneurs, we have this crazy big goals and dreams. So, the more bigger things you want to achieve in life, less time you have to spend in the comfort zone, more you have to be outside. And, anything that you do for 10, 20, 50 times becomes your new comfort zone. So the definition of being out there outside of comfort zone is you doing things for the first time. When you do things for the first time, it's much more likely that you won't succeed on your first try, just like with riding a bike, driving a car, and so on. And so the magic of success is how you deal with failure and how you bounce back quickly from failure, because success is just you trying a whole bunch of things, eliminating what doesn't work, figuring out what does work, and then doing that. That's, how you achieve success.
It is. And it's true. Like, people talk about like failure being a bad thing. It's not like a destination. Like if you're just going through a plan, you're trying to execute a plan, and you have, let's call it a setback or a failure, but more like a setback, and you say, okay, I failed. Well, you've only failed if you've accepted that that's the end of the road, like, and that's the position you're going to sit in. But if you're on this mission and it's a journey, and you say, well, I've failed at this milestone in my path of my journey, but I'm going to pick up the pieces and I'm still going to carry on, whether it's continuing down the exact same path or changing directions or something like that. As a person for your life, it's only a failure when you've accepted that is the end of the road.
Oh, you cut off a little bit.
Oh, did I? What was the last part you heard?
You were just saying you go down the path, the journey, and then you froze.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just saying is that it really is only a failure when you accept that that's the end of the road. And so as long as you're willing to get back up, pick the pieces back up and keep moving, then your failure is only a setback. It's not a definition of who you are. So
yeah, absolutely. I agree fully with that.
Where did you get the name The Fail Coach? I mean, there must be a story behind that.
Of course, there's always a story behind it. So I'll just give you a very short version, but then feel free to dive into whatever you want. I had several successful companies during the great economic situation before the last recession. And at that time, I didn't realize that I'm lacking foundations, solid foundations, 2018, 2019, you could wing it, just with sales, marketing, you were able to wing it and grow to 7-8 figures. It's when the troubles come, that's when you need foundations to sustain through those troubled times. And so with the last recession, one of my companies was in real estate. The real estate market crashed. I was in the middle of building that huge project, and the bank said, we want out. Everything else that I owned was as a collateral. They took that collateral. I ended up with empty bank accounts on all my companies, other companies, wasn't able to pay suppliers, employees, and so on. It was just the domino effect that happened. And so I ended up $5 million in personal debt, and no option to do personal bankruptcy, because the laws here in Europe are a little bit stricter on personal bankruptcy than they are in the US. And so, fast forward through a few months of depression, anxiety, stress, darkness, not seeing, I used any idea that I had, and suddenly I found myself in this corner, not seeing any options what to do. And then you start asking yourself, is it worth living like this, and so on. And, for my understanding back then wasn't like, oh, this shall pass, and then, things will be okay again. For me, it was like, okay, so this is it. This is it for the rest of the life. So thinking a lot about suicide. And then one evening, I came seconds away from actually doing it. Thankfully, I had the aha moment, because back then it was so easy to blame everything on outside factors, the real estate crash, the financial crash, the governments not doing their part, and so on. But I realized that it was me all along. It was my bad decisions, me not laying down foundations, and so on. And once I figured that out, it was okay. If I did it once, I can do it again. And that was like, if I learn something from this whole experience, if I change and behave differently and change my decision making and who I choose to work with and so on, I can do it again, and I can do it even bigger. And that was that little ray of light that brought me back, and I kept fighting again. And it was a fight. I mean, for 3.5 years, it was daily fight with old Miha, new Miha, old habits, new habits. So it wasn't, I had the aha moment and now it was just smooth sailing. Mm-hmm. And then in 2014, I started a new startup, was able to scale that startup from 0 to multiple 8 figures in the first year by using the lessons learned through those troubled times, and then to multiple 9 next year. Then I had a successful Fortune 100 exit. So a Fortune 100 company took us over. I was able to walk away. I found myself with the abundance of time and money and the freedom of choice. Mm-hmm. Went on a long vacation, got bored after a few days of drinking tequila, took out my phone, checked, where are some meetups nearby. And the more I was hanging out with entrepreneurs, they ask you who you are, what's your story, you start sharing. They started, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And I kind of literally really just fell into the whole coaching business. And plus it felt really, really amazing being able to help somebody else and not just doing things for myself, like, just another company on my own. But it was so much nicer. It felt so much nicer to help others. So the Fail Coach came actually from the realization that everything that I've learned, all the success came from learning the lessons from my failures and how I established that healthy relationship with failure and so on, and how failure is a very, very important part on that road to success. And so, that's how the whole idea of the Fail Coach was born.
That's an amazing story. And you touch on excuse me, a few topics that I wanted to go back and dive a little deeper on. Is we talk about being successful because of external conditions and learning from our failures. When I was first getting started in my career, I was working for a really, really large general contractor, and we had tons of like multi-million dollar projects we were working on. And some projects went really, really great, and some projects went really poorly and didn't do so good. And if you were on like a really good project, the attitudes, the motivation, all that was high. You're just loving life because it's going so easy, and you're thinking about all the things like that you're doing and how great you are. You're like, oh, this job's going successful because I'm so good at what I do. But then you leave a good job and you get assigned to a bad job, and all of a sudden you're just like, I have these skills, but why am I not just like turning this project around? Why is it so challenging, so difficulty? And in both scenarios, there's external conditions that we're not in control of, but we're reacting to them. And when things are positive, we don't really learn some hard lessons. We don't really realize the things that we're doing. They're kind of like maybe the outside forces are compensating for our shortcomings. So we think we're doing good, but we're really not. But when the projects that you're on would be bad projects, you have to really dig deep, because you're like, well, we don't have money to do things. So you'd have to be resourceful. You'd have to be creative. You'd have to find new ways to solve problems because of you just didn't have this like, big budget to cover mistakes that otherwise would have been covered on a successful project. So that was kind of like one of the lessons I learned first on, is that you learn so much more on difficult problems when you're dealing with challenges, when you're dealing with failures, than you do when things are successful. And then you talk about coming rising from the ashes of failure to having a successful exit on a startup company, which leads you to coaching. So the next topic I wanted to talk about, and I'll go through the topics and we'll let you get your take on it. But when you're coming out of this thing, and you're thinking thoughts of suicide, you're thinking thoughts of like, how do I do this? And you decide you're going to face the challenges and you're going to get out of it. You're going to build a company. Clearly, you can't do that completely on your own. You need to have connections and relationships at the banks that you're negotiating with are willing to come up with a solution for you. You have to find team members that are working with you on the business. You have to find advocates for you to meet the companies that want to take you over and buy you out. And then once you've had that exit, I think the last topic I'd like to get your take on would be after you've had some success and you've learned from your failures, you've stepped back and looked back and said, hey, I can't keep this all to myself. I need to help others. I need to share my knowledge, my resources, and teach others from my mistakes so that I can guide them into be successful. I think there's a huge sense of fulfillment when you reach back and you lift somebody else up and you're helping others succeed and achieve their goals. And once your goal setting goes from what can I do for myself to what can I do for others, this feeling of satisfaction, feeling of fulfillment, but at least for me, when I chase goals for myself and the box is checked, I don't like sit there and bask in the glory and be like, yeah, I did it. It's like, I got to get on to the next thing. And it's just kind of like this passing moment. But when I've been able to reach back and help people achieve their goals, I feel like so uplifted and inspired. I'm just like, I need to get some more of that. I want to help some more people. And it just keeps me driving to go back and do the same things.
Yeah, it's very addictive when you help others and then that fuzzy, warm feeling. And, I see with myself, I think every time when my clients or my students have a win or a big win, a major win, I think I'm honestly happier than they are and more proud than they are and so on. It really is. It's like a drug, I guess, you get hooked up on that as somebody might get hooked up on cocaine or something. And I mean, it wasn't an intentional thing. It wasn't like, oh, now I'm going to go and help others. It just, came naturally. I realized that, yes, I love dancing. Yes, I love tequila. Yes, I love all of that. I love the good life. But I'm missing something, and when I was talking with non-entrepreneurial people, I was missing that component, like the brainstorming, coming together, thinking something together, doing something together. So I naturally just flocked towards fellow entrepreneurs. And then, they heard my story and it was, I mean, yes, it's a good story and there are good millions involved and, because of that, they started asking me, and it was kind of like it went hand in hand. The more they were asking me, the more I was giving back, and I always was like a little bit of Mr. Nice Guy. I wasn't able to say, "Oh no, I'm not going to help you." I was always a person that if I can, I will always help. And so and then reflecting. And it felt so good. And the more I did it, the better it felt. And now I can't think of, spending one day away from fellow entrepreneurs. It's just, I guess it's in my DNA. It's in my blood.
Yeah.
It's not just what I do. It's who I am on the inside.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big advocate that if you hang out in places, that are more likely to have positive outcomes for what you're chasing, they're bound to happen. And in this case, you almost kind of like backed into it accidentally. You're like, I'm hanging out with non-entrepreneurs. I'm going to hang out with entrepreneurs, and you start hanging out with these people, and the ideas start coming to you because you're around these people. So it almost backed in. Like instead of like somebody says, hey, I want to help entrepreneurs, I want to get involved with entrepreneurs, I'd usually tell people, go find out where entrepreneurs hang out and go to those places. And eventually you're going to meet somebody who's going to introduce you to somebody, and you're going to, over time, develop some friends within this category that you're looking to be a part of. And instead you went with like, hey, I like hanging out with entrepreneurs. And then because you're hanging out with all these people and they're looking for support, like the idea it comes to you and it pulls the passion out of you where you can help. So I think that's an interesting way of finding your passions there.
Yeah. I always believe that, it's not you that you find your passion. I mean, first you need to get to the point where you have the freedom of choice, where you do things because you want to do them, not because you have to do them. You can't find, or at least that's my belief, that you can't really find your passion when you have to earn money, when you have to do certain things, because then you're driven not by your heart, by your truth, but because you need to make ends meet and so on. And I mean, I understand that, I've been there. But it's only, I guess, once you do the full circle and you get to the point where you're completely free, and at first you think, oh, what will I do? I'll probably just lie on couch and watch Friends all day long. But once you get to that point, that doesn't fulfill you. Maybe you do that a day, 1 day or 2 days, but then you get bored. And then, you naturally migrate towards where your passions are, and you kind of meet your purpose, your passion in between. So it's kind of, I believe it finds you as much as you find it.
Yes, exactly. So you work with a lot of entrepreneurs. My question would be, the entrepreneurs that come to you, when they approach you, what do you feel is their biggest misconception about what you're going to provide with coaching, and where do you take your recommendations usually to? What are the areas that you'd say, hey, this is what you need to focus on in a generalized sense, not specific to any one company or not?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I've been an entrepreneur for the past 23 years, and I've done a lot of different roles throughout that journey. So I can help a lot of different entrepreneurs from different point of views. And so, I have 8-9 figure entrepreneurs coming to me. They have the freedom of money, but they don't trust. They don't have a system. They don't trust the system. Mm-hmm. So they take on all the major roles in their company, and they want, the freedom of choice. So you can't have the freedom of choice if you don't have both freedoms, the money and the time. Mm-hmm. So they have the money, but they don't have the time. And often they feel trapped by their own creation. Often they feel, well, I just have to make this compromise so that my family will be well, and then my kids will have both, but, I'm just stuck here. And mm-hmm. so we challenge that, and we create that freedom for them. But then I also do a lot of work with very new entrepreneurs, with people who are just entering entrepreneurial world, and they're dealing with infobesity. They go on Google, they find gazillion of different results, and then they're stuck. They have no clarity what they should do, how they should do it, what their next step should be. People have fear of failure. People have, imposter syndrome, fear of success, and so on. So in general, I would say that 70% of what I do is more life coaching, therapy, marriage counseling than the actual business coaching. Because business part is really super easy. That's why I'm always saying, that foundations in any business start with the first pillar, and that's you, the entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And that's where majority of problems lie. And we have to solve that. And then once we solve that, scaling, exiting, that's really simple. I mean, simple. Technically speaking, if you want to scale, you need to look at things holistically. You need this, that, processes, KPIs, benchmarking, business intelligence, and so on. HR strategy in place. So it's very technical. And once you lay those foundations, you can start going up. Very, very easy, very simple. So if I guess if businesses would be created by some robotic AI solution, it would be really, really easy except for the emotional part where you need to inspire your team. You need to, awake emotions in your clients and so on. But the technical part is super simple. It's really more the work on themselves, but every change comes from the inside. So we first need to address that and deal with that.
I think that's an excellent take on how to be an entrepreneur and the things that you focus on and change, because, when you're building a business and you have this passion and this inspiration to do it, you're driven by that, and you seek out a coach and you say, well, the coach is going to give me the playbook, the coach is going to give me the answers, the coach is going to like set me up so that I don't have to solve all these problems. But really the problems are within us, and the coach's responsibility is to pull what's already there out of the person, out of the person being coached, and making it them come up with the answers and them execute it. That's what really delivers the best results. And I think with anything, anytime anybody's approached a coach, whether it's for personal training or for business coach or life coach, the principles are the same. It's what is inside you that's going to make the change. At first, hey, let me show you how to do the movements. Let me show you how to do the core principles. But once you know those things, like, you don't need to keep going and going like, here's how you go to do a business. Well, one, you show up every day. Okay, if you're showing up every day, you've kind of got the fundamentals down. But if you want to inspire others, you want to kind of correct the problems you have struggles with, then it's finding within yourself to make those changes. So like, if you're a successful business, but it's really because you're running all the controls, you're looking to pull somebody out of that and say, hey, you got to trust others. You got to put systems in place that you can trust, that you can get your time back so that you can enjoy the things you want to do and focus where you want to be. So that's amazing advice there. What would be, we talk about failure. So I'm going to ask you a question. What does the word failure taste like to you?
I can't live without it. Often I'm asked, now that you're the fail coach, does that mean that you never fail again? And I always say, I hope not, because that would be a terrible thing. I guess I fail even more. It's the differences in how I view failure, because, I want to achieve big things, great things. So if I want to do that, I need to push myself out of the comfort zone constantly. So not failing would mean that I'm not trying. It's really that I know how to lay down foundations to recognize failure sooner, and I can react sooner, so it doesn't have to go as deep as back in 2009. But yeah, I love it. I embrace it, and I'm scared of not failing.
That's great. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. If somebody was going to find you and wanted to reach out and hire you as a coach, where should they go to find you?
Fail.coach. That's it. Just fail.coach.
That's easy to find. All right. Any last parting words?
Well, maybe just two little things. So if you are an entrepreneur, make sure that you develop healthy relationship with failure, because that will speed up your business development a lot. And the second thing is, do not ever forget to lay down foundations. Building a business is just like building a house. You always need to start with foundations to build on top. The foundations aren't there for the good times. The foundations are there when it's raining, flooding, earthquakes, and so on, so that the house doesn't crush on you. And this is what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, because they don't have the foundations, and then you see shaky times coming in, and then once that happens, everything crushes down on them, just like what happened to me back in 2009.
Yeah, I've been there in that sense of when you're doing something, you're starting it off on your own, you don't always want to put in the time and effort to build the foundation, build the systems. But then when you
it's not sexy.
Yeah, it's not. And then you build a little bit of success, and it's so much harder to go back and start changing the way you do things when you don't set it up that way from the beginning. So that's great advice there.
I see with some of my clients who are already 8-9-figure businesses, and then we have to go back and lay down foundations. It's always a bigger struggle than if you start in the beginning, because you have employees, you have certain way of doing things, and now we are turning everything around. Plus, the business needs to run in the meantime. So it's much, much harder to go back and lay down foundations later. It's so much easier to do that as soon as you can. If you're just starting out, do it immediately. If you're a 6-figure business right now, do it immediately. Don't wait until later, because it might be too late.
Yes. So true. Well, thanks again. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and hope you're staying safe over there in Europe.
Likewise.
All right. Thank you.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.